All right, hello once again. This is Jeff Scott, formerly of Rankin Technical College. And as part of my YouTube channel, JPS-Jeff Teaches Programming, and as part of the YouTube playlist for that channel, Jeff Teaches Programming-Python. And you can get to that from up here or by basically going in and just searching for that. All right, I've been doing a series of Python lectures. And what I've done so far is I have created basically a bunch of lectures that I did that went over the Python keywords. Okay. And after that, I went through a more extensive calculator list and a guessing game program. And then I've also gone through and done another upgrade on the calculator program where I added my own module, and I did a BMI program. But as you can see, the name of this is Python, BMI, and Payroll. And there's no payroll on here yet. So I'm going to start with that right now. And I'm going to create several of these, and we'll go over what they are as we start to go through them. All right. So I'm going to create a bunch of payroll files here. And I'm going to start by making Payroll01.py. And I want to add something, and I'll explain right away what it is I'm adding, why I'm adding it, etc. But I want to add that. What that is going to allow me to do is it's going to allow me to put in dollars and cents. In other words, I'm using the locale, all right, and I'm setting the currency format. And I said glean from the following URL. So in other words, you can tell where I got that information from. If you put your mouse over it like this, you can get even some more stuff, okay? So that's it right there. But what I want to do is I want to go back, and this is going to be a review lecture, and then we'll go into what we're doing next. So this is kind of where we started out. I'm going to say here first equals Jeff, last equals Scott, hours equal 40.0, rate equal 25.0, gross equal hours times rate, and then we'll print, and I'm going, whoops, and we're going to use an F string in here. So I'm going to print, and we're going to print with an F string. So it started with an F, and then in the double quotes, I'm going to just say first, last, which will say Jeff Scott, worked, hours, like that. So I'll have last week, let's say. So right now this will say something like Jeff Scott worked 40 hours last week. All right, let's put in one more print line in here. And what I'm going to do is cut that down. I want you to be able to see everything. This is the whole program. Another F string. And in that F string, I'm going to say at. And now I'm going to use this locale. So locale dot currency. Oops, I spelled locale wrong. Locale dot currency rate all right, so that'll say at $25 rather. We'll just say like per hour, so slash hour. Okay. And whoops, there. Slash hour, so it'll be like $25 an hour. Made And again, we use the locale, and that isn't current, that's currency. So let's grab this. And I want to just change this at the end here. I want to change it from rate here to gross. All right. All right, so let's look at this from the top. This is, I'm hard coding in the first name, the last name, the hours that you worked, and your hourly rate. So every time you run this program, it's going to have Jeff for the first name, Scott for the last name, 40.0 for the hours, 25.0 for the rate. Since we've got 40.0 and 25.0, 40 times 25 is going to give me 1,000. So every time I run it, it should say, if I did this right, Jeff space Scott worked 40.0 hours last week, period. Then on another line, at $25 an hour made $1,000. Okay, pretty simple stuff. All right. And yes, I know this is actually probably simpler than most of the stuff we did, but I want people to just understand this. So file, do a save all on this, and let's run it. And we get Jeff Scott worked 40.0 hours last week at $25 an hour made $1,000. Now, there's nothing in here for overtime. There's nothing in here where we're doing much of anything, to be honest with you. All right. But that's the first one. And I'm just going to kind of give you the progression of where we've gone to. So let me do a file, save. Let me close this. And immediately, let me copy this. And we're going to copy this to Payroll2. .py. All right, so I've got all that stuff that we had before. Nothing really new in there. Okay, in fact, nothing new at all, because this is the exact same thing that I'd already done. So there's nothing new in there. All right, that should make sense to everybody. All right. So far, what we have in here is we have the fact that we wrote this very, very simple program. All right. Well, let's make some changes to it. All right, because otherwise it's the same program we already did. So let's change this and let's give the user the opportunity to do some of his or her own work. So I'm going to say here, input, please enter your first name. All right, now notice I did not use an F string, and I'm not going to use one here either because I'm entering strings. So please enter your first name and please enter your last name. Okay, nothing really big there. All right. And let's come in here and let's continue. So please enter, how about your hours worked? Okay. And please enter your hourly rate. All right. So this is what we have right now. When we run the program, the difference between this and what we did before, because that's all I'm changing. But now when I run this, I should be able to, every time I run it, put in a different name, different first name, different last name, different hours worked, and different hourly rate. All right. So if I run this one, again, notice there's no error checking being done in here. So if I hit enter right now, it's going to have a blank for the first name. If I put in a 37, it'll think the first name's 37. But let's put in here Mary Jones. All right, hours worked, we'll say 33, and hourly rate, 33. All right, now we're getting an error. Okay, and it says can't multiply in sequence by non-int of type strings. So let's look at that. And actually, I'm surprised, I guess, that the other one worked. Because really what this should be, right here, in fact, let's go back to the first program. And we did this. And I'm going to change this right here to float and float. Because when you read these values in, they're really strings. All right. Now let's see, make sure I didn't break anything. So this is the one we just did. So this is our payroll 2. Let me go back and change our payroll 1 to this as well. So I'm going to go and change that line and add that. So let me go back, save all. Let me run this again. So again, we still get Jeff Scott worked 40.0 hours last week at $25 an hour, made $1,000. Okay? All right, so I've got that one. Let me close that and get rid of that one. All right, now this is the same program except for the fact that rather than hard coding those 4 values in other words, a value for first name, a value for last name, a value for hours worked, and a value for hourly rate, I'm now going to let the user, if she or he so chooses, put in different things every time. So if I run this, enter your first name, now I can say Steve Johnson, who worked 25 hours and makes $50 an hour. Okay, I'm getting another error. All right, and the problem, I think, I've got at locale.currency rate. It's not liking what I'm doing here, so let's see. Well, it's complaining about all this stuff that's in here. It says bad operating type for absolute value, a string. All right. Well, let's actually, you may not believe me, but I think this is a good thing. So let's do this. Let's change this to HRS for hours, and we're going to say that's equal to float hours. And how about HW or K? So that's hours worked, and this will be hourly rate. And that's going to be equal to float rate. Okay? All right. What's the advantage of doing that? The advantage of doing that is now in this gross thing here, I can just change this to HWORK times H rate. All right? Now, I'm not sure if it's going to complain about anything that's in here or not, so let's take a quick look. Okay, Clark, Kent, 50, 50. It is still complaining. All right, saying in line 14, payroll, 2 pi, line 14. The other one is something I can't fix. It's in a Python line. So in line 14, so it doesn't like this. All right, well, it doesn't like it. So how can we fix this? I thought it would take that, and I had no problems with it before, but I am now. All right, let's change this from rate to H rate. Let's change this from hours to HWRK. And let's change this. Well, it's still got gross, so let's see if it takes that. Bruce Wayne worked 40 hours, makes $40 an hour. All right, now it looks like it likes everything. So I've now got two working programs here. All right, in this one, if we look at what's different in here, all right, the difference, or the main difference, is we are now allowing the user to input his or her own first name in there, which I think at least is a little bit nicer. Makes the program, a little bit easier to work with. All right, so let's take this, let's do a file, save, let's close this, and now let's copy this one, and we're going to copy it to Payroll 3. .py. All right, I'm going to keep this. I'm going to still import the locale, but I'm going to import a few other things that I have been doing here lately. I'm going to import math, and that's going to allow me to use the math.isNotAnumber function. I'm going to import OS, which is going to allow me to clear the screen, and I'm going to import time to allow me to, for lack of better words, to kind of put in a timer. All right. Now I'm going to try to keep as much of this stuff in here as I can, but this is what we started to get into earlier, and that is I'm going to start to take this stuff and put everything that's in here in its own routine. So I'm going to get errors, but don't worry about it. We'll fix all of them. Let's define a main. All right. Now we get that error. Remember, if we put pass in here, that would fix it. But I want to write main. Okay, so I'm going to write main right now. And I'm going to come in here, and I'm going to say first name. Make it a little more intuitive. So rather than first, we'll say first name equals, and we'll set it equal to nothing. Okay, and I'm going to say while first name is equal to nothing, I'm going to want to call a routine I haven't written yet. All right, and I'm going to say, let me grab this line. So first name, get rid of this, there we go, is equal to please input or enter your first name. All right, so that's input, but I want to call it into a routine. So I'm going to call input first name. Now I'm getting an error because I don't have a routine called input first name. So let's put one down here. So I'm going to say here def input first name. I'll have to have some kind of a prompt. That's what I just had there. And here I will put for now pass. All right. In fact, I'm going to do this. I'm going to have an input first name. I'm going to have an input last name. I'm going to have an input hours worked. And I'm going to have an input hourly rate. All right. So I'm going to have all those as we move along in here. But right now, the only thing I've handled is this. All right, let me copy this down. And this will now say last name equals nothing, while last name is equal to nothing. Last name is going to be equal to input last name and please enter your last name. Okay, so we'll have please enter your first name and please enter your last name. So we've got those in here right now. Now I want to do the same thing for hours worked and hourly rate, but with those are not strings like we had right here. So I will copy this, but I'm going to make major changes right now. So this is going to say hours worked equals 0.0, while hours worked is equal to 0.0. Now I will grab this. So I've already got our first name. Here's our last name. So this will become this. All right. So what we'll say in here is this. This will be hours worked equals please enter your hours worked. All right. And then finally, I'll have another one for hourly rate. So right now, what I have put in here, just so you're aware of it, what I have put in here so far is I'm giving the user the opportunity to enter in his or her first name, last name, hours worked, and hourly rate. And I'm not doing anything in these routines. We'll look at that in just a minute. All right, so we've now got the rate. I'm not going to need right now this stuff. All right, so just going to get rid of that for now. Now, so this is going to be keep inputting until valid non-blank first name is input. And then this one will be keep inputting until valid non-blank last name is input. All right, this will be keep inputting until valid non-blank numeric first hours worked is input. And finally, this one will be until this with the hourly rate is input. All right, so what you're starting to see in here, what I'm starting to add, all right, is some validation. So first name can't be blank, last name can't be blank, hours worked can't be blank, rather, must be numeric. All right, let's even put in here, I didn't do this in mine, but we'll put in range. Okay, so rather than this keep input, I'm just going to change this to input. Input until valid non-blank first name. This will also be then input. So will this. All right, and we will change this one as well. So right now I can run this. All right, I can run this, but it's not going to, I don't think it's going to give me any output whatsoever. So let me save and let me run it. And you can see I still have this stuff, which is garbage. So let me get rid of that. Okay. And let me clear this and run it again. All right. So it's not doing anything. And you're like, wait a minute, it's not even calling your functions. Yeah, because where did I put everything? I put it in main, right? But we're not calling main. So I can come down here and call main. All right. And then I can come in here and run the program. So now it does come in and it says, please enter your hours worked, which is kind of surprising. Didn't ask me about the, hourly rate. And that's all it's giving me. So right now it's not asking me for some reason. So let's see. First name equals, while first name equal blank. We should have called input first name here and passed that. And it's not calling it for whatever reason, but that's okay. I think we'll fix it in just a bit. Here's the problem right now. We're not doing any validation. All right, but before I do that validation, I want to finish up main. All right, because now I have first name, last name, hours worked, and hourly rate. So I can come in here and say, I'm going to say gross pay. Let's set that equal to 0.0. I don't think we even have to do that, but I will anyway. And then I'm going to say gross pay equal, and I'm going to call calculate gross pay, which hasn't been written yet, pay, and I'm going to pass in hours worked and hourly rate. All right, so let me grab this, come down to here, down to the bottom, right before my call to main, def, and we'll, instead of hours worked, let's just call this HW, and instead of hourly rate, let's call this HR. And for now, again, we'll just put a pass in there. All right, and we didn't put in a colon. So right now, we've got routines that are doing most everything. But the other thing we want to do is after we do our gross pay, we want to print employee info. Again, hasn't been written yet, but we'll pass in first name, last name, hours worked, hourly rate, and gross pay. Okay. Now, that hasn't been written yet either. That's why I'm getting the underline here. So let's come down again to here, def, and we'll paste that in. Again, I'll put a pass in there. All right, and instead of first name, we'll call it FN. Last name, we'll call it LN. Hours worked will be HW. Hourly rate will be HR. And gross pay will be GP. Just to make it a little easier to read. So right now, I've got the framework for everything I need. I just haven't written the guts. All right, so first name is equal to nothing. While it's equal to nothing, prompt for a first name. Then last name is equal to nothing. While last name is equal to nothing, prompt for the last name. Okay, looks pretty good to me as far as I can tell right now. Then hours worked is nothing. While it's equal to 0 or nothing, input hours worked, do the same thing with hourly rate, then calculate the gross pay and print the employee's information. So what you can see is a couple things here. First of all, what I have started to do is to modularize this program. That should be honest, or pretty much everybody should be able to see that and understand that. Okay? Now, The other thing we're not able to do right now is every time we run this, we're only going to be running it once. All right. So we've got all this stuff in here, but hey, let's go in, as we've done several times. Let's go in here and say again, not again, again equals, and we'll say run program again, which has not been written. So let's grab it and put that down at the bottom. So let's def run program again, and again we'll do a pass. All right. So what we have to do is we have to start writing this stuff. Okay. And we're going to do that in just a minute. But what we'll do at the end here after this again, I'm going to come in here and say if not again, which means if it's the same thing as saying if again equal false. Should be the same. Expected expression. Okay? So if that's the case, what do we want? Well, we want to print. Let's just say something like this. How about this? Normal program termination. So I'll come in here and say print program ending normally. Goodbye. All right, so we'll say that. And when we get done, we will sleep for 3 seconds. So we're putting a timer in here. And then we'll clear the screen. And we will exit. Now, I've had problems with this using the not operator. So let me go back and just put in here for now, again, equal false, because it will take that. All right. So we've got that too. Now, otherwise, what do we want to do? Well, we want to run the program again, right? Okay. So if that, otherwise, we want to run the program again. So we've got if again is false, basically we want to terminate, else we want to run main again. Okay. All right. So right now, let's just see what we've got. All right. So file, save all. You'll notice that these are all ungrayed except this one. That we're going to use in our math.isNaN. But since we're not using it yet, it's letting us know, it's gray to let us know, all right, that it has not been used yet. So let's run this. Again, it's skipping those first two, which I don't like. But when I come in here and I put in 40, 40, boom. And then it's just coming back and asking me again. All right. So right now, the only thing I don't like is it's not asking me for the first name and the last name. All right. So close this. So let's see if we can figure out why that is. For first name, while first name is equal to nothing, which it is, should be calling this. Please enter your first name. Input first name. Am I missing something in there? Input first name. We got our prompt. Now let's see if it comes back in just a minute, okay? All right. So in our input first name, we're going to start putting some code in here. So user input equals input prompt. So that should run the prompt. All right. Now we're going to use a try-catch block. And we're going to say in here try, and we're going to do some input validation. So first name, input validation. All right, and it's simply going to say if user input is equal to nothing, okay, meaning it was empty, we want to raise a value error. All right. And we're going to want to basically run this again. So not only are we going to want to come in here and raise a value error, all right, but we want to return here, we're going to return nothing. Sheesh. There we go. All right. Now let's put our except in here, and we're going to actually put in our value error. Okay, so except value error. And if that's the case, there was no error. So here, validation failed, i.e., no first name input. Okay? On the other hand, down here in this except, all right, so in this value error rather, so if this is the case, what do we want to do? Well, let's print a message and let them know. So print, and we can use an F string in here. Invalid input for first name, please re-enter. Invalid input for first name, please re-enter. And that return that was here, I actually want to put that here. All right, and we'll move this over. So again, I always tell my students, play computer. All right. So let me put an else in here. Else return user input. Okay. So again, let's play computer. You come in and start to run the program. All right. First name is empty because you set it to empty string. So first name is equal to input first name, and the prompt we're passing is please enter your first name with a tab. It comes down to here, and it runs that, and it puts the result into user input. All right. Then we validate. We say if that user input was empty, the validation failed. There was no first name input, so we raise a value error. Else, the validation succeeded, i.e., first name input. Okay? So if it was empty, we raise a value error where we go down here and we print invalid input for first name, please re-enter, and we return blank. So blank will be in there. So first name will still be blank, so it should call it again. The good news is, and there's a reason I did it like this, all right, and the last name routine is going to be the same thing. So on this here, I might be screwed up a little bit with it, with its where things are lined up, but we'll fix it. There. So this is input last name. So everywhere I've got first, it'll have to change to last. So no last name input was a last name input. All right. Invalid input for last name. It's the same routine. What I'm going to do in the next iteration of this program is I'm going to combine these so that it goes into I'm going to combine this into one routine that'll handle both the first name and the last name. Okay? All right. So right now, if I've done everything correctly, and I believe I have, we've got some code bloat in here. In other words, we've got some code that we could clean up, and we will in the next iteration. But we should have handled the first name. We should have handled the last name. So now it's time to come in here and handle. So this should be input hours worked. And this one should be input hourly rate. All right. And now we're going to write those. Okay. So just like we did previously. So there's our input first name. There's our input last name. And now in here, we're going to change this. So it's going to say user input equal prompt. I'm sorry, equals input prompt. All right, just like we did before. And just like we did before, we're going to put this whole big thing into a try-catch block. But it'll be done a little bit differently. All right, so let's start with a try. And then in a bit, we're going to have in here, except value error. Okay, so we're going to have that there. Give me an error right now because there's nothing in here, but we'll fix it just a second. All right. So we have to check for blank or non-numeric. Okay. And actually, let's go in here. I'm making these numbers up just so you know. Let's add some global constants. So we will say min hours equals 0. So the smallest number of hours you can work is none, 0.0. Max hours equals, we'll say 84.0. And what do I mean? Well, if somebody works 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, that's 84 hours. All right, so we'll put in here min H rate, so that's the hourly rate. That'll also be 0. And max H rate, and that'll be, let's just, again, these are arbitrary values I'm making up. So $99.99. All right. So if a person's hours are either non-existent, or they're non-numeric, or they're less than 0, or they're greater than 84, that should be an error condition. Otherwise, I should accept it. When I do the hourly rate in just a minute, if the hourly rate is blank, or non-numeric, or less than 0, or greater than $99.99, again, that will be an error condition. All right, so let's see if we can combine all this stuff. All right, so in here, we're just going to say if user input is equal to nothing, if it was empty, all right, or, all right, so that's the first thing, or math dot is NaN, and we're going to float this user input. In fact, we've got, there's our input. All right. And let's come in here and right away say we'll call this float input. Okay? And I'm going to set that equal to float of user input. Okay? All right. So if the user input is empty or it's this, I think I can come in here and do this. Float input. All right, so I've got that. Or the float input is less than min hours, or the float input is greater than max hours. Well, those are our error conditions. So if that's the case, if that indeed is the case, I want to raise a value error. Otherwise, there was no error. So else, I want to return float input. And if there was an error in here, all right, meaning one of those four things happened. Either we left the input blank, all right, or we put something non-numeric in, or, and you're getting the idea, hopefully. All right, we'll just come in here and we'll say, so if that is the case, what do we want to do? Well, we want to let them know their input was invalid, so print invalid input for hourly rate. Please re-enter. And here we will return 0. All right. So there are 4 possible error conditions below. All right. First, user input could be blank. That's the first baddie. Second, the user input could be non-numeric. Third, the user input could be out of range, we'll call it 1. In other words, less than, what did we say? Less than 0. Or the user input could be out of range 2, which means it's greater than 84. Those are our 4 error conditions. Let's pretty this a little bit. I think this will make it look better. Yeah, I'll fix that in just a second. That's what I'm going to do now. There we go. So now I can just change that to this. All right. So if any one of those things occurs, we raise a value error where we'll print invalid, please re-enter, and we'll return 0. Let's change up here where we're saying please enter hours worked. All right. We're going to say this. It's going to be a little big, but it's okay. But I'm going to say this. I'm going to make this an F string, and I'm going to also make the other one an F string. All right. And it'll say, please enter hours worked. I don't need your. Let's get rid of that word your in there for all of these. All right. So please enter first name, please enter last name, please enter hours worked. We'll put in here between min hours, whoopsie, min hours and max hours. Okay, and for this one, we'll say please enter hourly rate between min H rate and max H rate. I think that'll read a little bit nicer. All right. Now, we've already pretty much got the next one written, and what I mean is we're inputting our hours worked here. So I'm going to grab each one, everything that's in here, every flipping thing, and I'm going to copy it down into here. Why? Why did I do this? Well, let's look. All right. There are 4 possible error conditions. Now it's less than 0 or greater than 99.99. This is not min hours anymore. This is min H rate. And it's max H rate. All right, and this is for, so this was invalid input for hours worked. Please re-enter. This is invalid input for hourly rate. Please re-enter, and we return 0. We should be, all that stuff should be done. Okay? Now, let's expect another thing in here. And what is that? Let's add some overtime. So we're going to say add 2 things in here. We're going to call this max non-OT. That's the most numbers you can work without getting overtime, and that's 40. And we'll have another one called OT rate, and we'll set that equal to 1.5. Let's put some comments in here. This will say minimum hours an employee can work. So this will say maximum hours an employee can work. This will be minimum employee hourly rate. This will be maximum employee hourly rate. This will be maximum employee hours for straight time for no overtime. And this will just be the overtime rate. All right, I didn't do this when I wrote this before, but I'm doing it now because I think it will read a little bit better. All right, so you can see I am sprinkling some comments in here. We'll put more in just a minute when we get down to this. All right, so we've got all that. Hopefully that's all okay. Now it's time for calculating gross pay. All right. So we're going to call calculate gross pay, and we're going to pass in hours worked and hourly rate. So we now have a valid hours worked and a valid hourly rate. So call calculate gross pay to calculate the gross pay. Do take overtime or non-overtime into account here. Into account when doing the calculation. Call it non-OT, like that. All right, so let's come down here. There it is. Okay. So put a comment here. If employee worked less than or equal to 40 hours, which we called max non-OT, pay straight time. That means no overtime. So if hours worked, I'm sorry, that's HW now, is less than or equal to max non-OT, all right, well, it's the gross pay. So let's put a new variable in here where we'll set gross equal to 0.0. Okay, so gross is going to be equal to, all right, and it should be HW, hours worked, times hourly rate. I think those have already been converted, but we'll find out in just a moment. Else, all right, so else employee has worked some overtime, some OT, so pay gross should include OT pay. All right. Okay. So here, this is gross equals that. All right. Otherwise, and I'm going to put something in here, and then in just a minute, I'm going to return gross. Okay. But it has nothing after this else. That's why it's giving me the error. So we're going to say here, gross equal, well, there are 40 hours, which is max non-OT, times their hourly rate. So that's their straight time pay. But we have to add to that then. So plus, and I'm going to say the hours they worked minus max non-OT. All right, so the hours they worked minus max non-OT. And that will be times the hourly rate times the overtime rate. All right, now it doesn't like something in here. Let's see if we can figure out what it is. Looks as though it doesn't like the fact that I put that onto two lines. Not sure why, but there. And then we'll return the gross. So let's assume for a second somebody worked 50 hours. So they've got 40 hours of straight time and they've got 10 hours of overtime. So if they work 40 hours, it's just 40 times, if they make $10 an hour, it's 40 times 10. If they work 50 hours, it's 40 times 10. That's their straight time again. All right. Plus the number of hours they worked, which was 50 minus 40. So that's 10 times their hourly rate times their time and a half. That should be correct. All right. So now I want to, print out first name, last name. We'll keep going here. Hours worked, hourly rate, and gross pay for this employee. Okay. All right. can basically kind of steal what we had before, I think. So let's grab this, and where we printed all this stuff out, let's grab that, see if it works. It may not, but we'll see. And don't worry, we'll fix it. There's a problem here with the spacing. All right, so first name, last name, worked, that many hours last week at an hour made. Okay. Now, the only thing that should be left in here is running the program again. All right, so that should be, at least, I'm hoping, that's the only thing I've got left to do in here. So, come back up here. We're getting up here already. This is, after this one, I think I'll take a little break in. So, allow user to run program again if desired. All right. Now this is going to be very similar to stuff that we've done before. Okay. And let's see. Yeah, so this will be again. Okay, that's all good. In fact, I think what I'll do is I'm going to copy that from my calculator program. Hopefully I've got that in there. Or maybe I don't. And it looks like I don't. How about in the BMI program? There we go. So I'm just going to grab this whole run again thing. And I'm going to put it into the end of my payroll 3. Right there. All right, so file, save all. Now, there's 170 lines in here, which is probably either the largest program I've done or it's amongst the largest programs I've done. There's a lot of comments I tried to sprinkle in here to make it easier for people to understand what's going on. All right, let me quickly just try to run it once. It still is not, it's going right to enter hourly rate, which usually says to me that I've got a problem with my tabbing. So there's main. Doesn't look like it though. Prompt user, prompt. All right, I'm going to see if I can figure out what that problem is, but since I'm over an hour right now, I'm going to stop. When I come back, I'm going to do 3 things. First, debug this program. Second, rewrite this program, and instead of having an input first name and an input last name, we'll just have an input name that'll handle both. Instead of having an input hours worked and an input hourly rate, we'll have an input hours worked or hourly rate that'll handle them both. All right, so I'll do that. So I'm going to fix that. And I'm going to fix what's wrong now. I'm going to make a version 4 of this where I combine those. And then we're going to talk a little bit about where we're going to go next. And that is to do something a little bit more complex than what we've been doing thus far. That's it for now.